please let's give some big smooches to my guest, Laura Stassi. Welcome, Laura.
Hello.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you here.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
I have to tell you.
Yes, thank you for inviting me.
This might make you blush. I don't know. But you are like one of our most requested guests. I swear. I've been on your show, Dating While Gray, twice. And I've had so many of my listeners say, why don't you have Laura Stassi on? And I was like, I've already had Laura Stassi on. And then I looked back and realized, oh my goodness, I haven't had Laura Stassi. Let's get her in here right this minute. So thank you for being here.
Oh, wow. Oh, what a thrill. Thank you, listeners. I hope I don't disappoint you.
No, you could not disappoint because so many people listen to your podcast and it's been such an inspiration to so many daters. So I mentioned a second ago, it's called Dating While Gray. What made you want to start a podcast? What was the inspiration behind Dating While Gray?
Well, I barely knew what a podcast was when I got the podcast, but the long and short of it is I was married for almost 30 years, got what I found out was called a gray divorce. That's not my term. Researchers call it gray divorce. It was a long time first marriage that came to an end. And once the dust was settled, I was really, discombobulated. People say, well, was it a shock? Well, divorce, I don't think, if you're paying attention, you kind of know it's coming, but you sometimes dread what's coming. And in my case, I dreaded it because I was afraid of being by myself. I'll go down right now and say it. Being married was all I knew because I'd got married so young. And so once I was able to, find a place to live, kind of reestablish my career, then I started thinking, okay, I would like to find a romantic partner again. And how do people our age do that? Are people our age even doing that? I had no idea. So I thought, okay, I'm going to write a book. I had written books before, children's books, but I thought I'm going to write a book about it. So I started a blog called Dating While Gray because for me, what came after a gray divorce was dating while gray. And I put out a call out on Facebook, just my personal Facebook page, and said, hey, if you know someone who's coupled up after age 50, I would love to talk to them. And that's sort of how it happened. And then I did that for about a year. I was still working full time, but then WAMU, my NPR member station, they put out a call out looking for creative projects that could turn into podcasts. And so I thought, once I had it in my head, I thought this is the perfect podcast.
And it is the perfect podcast. And how long have you been doing this podcast now?
So the podcast incubator program ended in 2018, and I went into contract for a first season with WAMU in 2020.
Wow.
So since 2020.
Wow. That's in podcasting years, that is a very long time. And it's interesting, Laura, you were kind of ahead of the curve because I feel like, as someone who's worked in media for all my life, basically, I have seen a real shift. And I actually, at one point I worked in talent diversity initiatives, and I was part of, I started the program at NBC in finding diverse voices. One of the things we were looking for was content from seniors and people who, like in the industry, you're going to laugh at this. In the TV industry, you're considered protected senior status over 40. but
well, and I hate the word senior. Can we just say?
Okay, so yeah, what term would you like for me to use?
Older people.
So we were looking for underrepresented voices because TV had been so pushed towards younger, like because advertisers wanted buyers that hadn't settled into brands yet. So they wanted everything younger. And there really wasn't much being produced for or by older creators. And that was always a category that eluded me. It was really hard to get anything through with that focus. And I feel like there's just been this like renaissance in the last year or so with The Golden Bachelor or The Golden Bachelorette, now Later Daters on Netflix. What is going on in media?
There's a lot to unpack here. First of all, I think part of the problem with podcasting is that advertisers are still looking for that 18 to 49 age group. I'm having a hard time getting the funding to continue because people don't understand the value of the demographic, I would say. And I think also in some ways, people still want to buy into the fairy tale. I mean, you brought up the Golden Bachelor and Golden Bachelorette. And let's just say, let's just put it on the table right now. People want happily ever after. And if we're older and we're on the market or we're looking for new love, okay, clearly something went wrong with our previous story where we don't have the happily ever after. But I do appreciate you saying that, because thank goodness media is recognizing that older people can be interesting, can be vibrant, and that I feel like you brought up the later daters. Later daters really is showing that happily ever after is a process, not an endpoint. And what we want as older singles is not necessarily to live with a romantic partner 24/7, in the same place. So, yeah, a lot's changed, but at the same time, there's still a lot that needs to be changed, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you about the chasing the fairy tale. I mean, I literally wrote a book called F the Fairy Tale.
Yes.
Because I feel like daters of all ages still have this idea of there's like a sequence that you go through, and I call it in the book, I call it the relationship escalator. And it's really interesting in later daters, and to some extent also like the Bachelor, Bachelorette, where you see that when you are dating older, you actually have more options. You have more possibilities, because you realize, and Logan Urie's a friend of the show. She's, the host on the Later Daters. There was a moment in the first episode where she asks one of the daters what they want. And like, I think that was the dater that had been married 3 times. And she's like, what do you want? A long-term partnership? Do you want marriage? Do you just want cohabitation? Do you not want cohabitation? I've been talking about that a lot on the shows that I do, this living apart together, this lat relationship trend. And I'm seeing this also with my older clients, that there's like this process that we have to go through to release those old ideals and ask ourselves, what do we want right now? Right. And so how do you recommend an older dater who's coming into the dating scene, maybe having never dated before, like met someone in high school or college, and basically all of this is new? How do you even clarify what you want at this stage in your life?
Well, it's funny, because when I first started the show, I felt like a lot of the people in my audience had really done a lot of either soul searching or talking with friends, and they were coming at dating a certain way, a more head on the shoulders kind of way. Not that they didn't believe in, instant love or instant sparks, but they seemed more level-headed. Lately, and I don't know if it is because of what's going on in society, and we all seem to be kind of negative or kind of depressed lately, or the Golden Bachelor, we're holding this up as some kind of an ideal that, it's possible, but I'm finding that a lot of the daters I'm hearing from now are really just discouraged. It's like, I've tried it. It's not working for me. I'm going to just give up. At the same time, they're still listening to the podcast and they're still commenting on the Dating While Gray Facebook page. So I feel like there's kind of a salvageable, aspect there. But I do wonder, and I wanted to ask you, because you're the dating expert. I'm the dating journalist. I just compile information. But do you feel like older people are more negative about even wanting to try the experience, or?
No, actually.
Or what?
I feel like I hear you. Everyone is negative right now. I feel like we've been talking a lot this season about dating frustration, dating burnout. And I've been doing this a long time, Laura. And I've seen a lot of cycles come and go. I was talking a lot about dating burnout prior to 2020. And then we actually, weirdly, during the pandemic, had a little respite from it, because I think people were like, oh, there's a different way to date. It's new. It's online. It's video chat. This is kind of novel, and it's a new way to connect. And we were all so starved for connection at that point. And somehow in the
Right.
last year or two, we've come back to complete and total dating burnout. And so I actually feel like my 50 plus clients come into it usually with a willingness to try new things, whereas sometimes my 20 or 30 something daters feel so like grizzled from this online dating experience that the gauntlet that they've been running, that they're
Right.
just like exhausted, and they're like, well, what are you going to teach me that I haven't already experienced before? And sometimes what all it
Right.
takes is that beginner mind, right? And I do a lot of yoga and mindfulness and spirituality, and that's something I struggle with too. But especially in dating, it requires that with each individual interaction. You have to come to the table like, okay, it hasn't worked out before, or maybe I'm divorced or widowed, or that was the story. That was the story of that prior season of my life. But you have to be willing to
Right.
to believe that it could be different with each individual person. Otherwise, you're going to come to the date, like you said, just discouraged, already disappointed, and not open to the
Right.
experience.
Plus, I do feel like the older we are, and again, this is kind of a general statement, but some people are so specific about why they're dating. I mean, they're only going to date if they know that they're going to meet the one that they're going to live with, fall in love with for the rest of their lives, blah, blah. And so they consider it a failure if they meet someone, go out on a few dates, and then for whatever reason, it doesn't work out. Instead of using that as kind of a learning experience, like, okay, what did I get from this person? Because clearly I do feel like people come into our lives for a reason. So even if it doesn't work out, surely there's something you can take away from that experience. But I talked with a man who was widowed, and he and his wife actually talked about, when she dies, she wants him to, go on and find someone else. And so after about 7 months, he started dating, and he fell madly in love. And he was calling, when I was talking to him, he was calling her, oh, my ex did this, my ex did that, blah, blah. I was like, oh, well, how long were you dating? And he said 2.5 months.
Oh,
And I said, that seems a little soon for, an ex after 2.5 months. And then I asked him why they broke up. And it was because she was still friendly with one of her exes. And he didn't like that. I think he was getting in his own way,
Yeah.
that he, all these kind of rules that we have to follow.
yeah. We as humans tend to get in our own way, don't we? And funny enough, so many of us think we're doing it with the best of intentions. We do have the best of intentions, but actually, I want to talk about that more when we return. Thank you so much, lovers, for supporting the people who help us bring you dates and mates absolutely free. Okay, Laura, before the break, we were talking about dating with the best of intentions and how daters sometimes inadvertently get in their own way. But now I actually want to talk a little bit about dating etiquette and some of these norms that may be shifting right now. It's this rigidity. And, I hear a lot from people that we create these stories, these narratives to make our experiences make sense. And I hear a lot, well, men only want to date younger women. And in my experience as a dating coach, I've only been doing this like almost 20 years, but in my experience of a dating coach, I don't believe that to be true. Some men want to date younger, but I think what people are attracted to is like possibility and flexibility. And I do find sometimes among my older daters, and I'm not even necessarily talking about 50 plus, like you could be 35 plus and be very set in your lifestyle, in your patterns, in your job, in your friend circle. And when you approach dating with any kind of rigidity, it makes it really hard to find somebody that's going to be your missing piece, that's going to fit in, because maybe they don't like that same activity that you enjoy, or maybe, they
Yeah.
don't want to follow the same relationship path that you have. And it's important to be aligned, but it's also important to realize where you can give a little bit. And that becomes
Yeah.
harder and harder as we get comfort we seek comfort from our routines and the people in our life and the stability. And it's weird with dating because you kind of just have to dive in, and it does require being a little bit uncomfortable. It does require compromising to fit somebody else into your life. And that's hard for a lot of people.
When it comes to like dating models that we're supposed to follow, like I consider myself very open-minded. And as I said on one of my episodes, I personally had a hard time embracing the word feminist, even though I believe in the feminist cause. But what I thought it meant is that we're also rejecting all of the gender normative behaviors of dating. And I wasn't ready to give all that up. But now that I've been doing this for a few years, I feel like I've become more open about it. But I'm still hearing people say, well, I really had a great time, but I have to wait X number of hours or days. But, if he doesn't get in touch with me, I can't get back in touch with him because, I don't want to look too eager or too easy to get or, that kind of thing. And I think sometimes we're just in our own ways when it comes to meeting new people.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm curious if you feel like the dating etiquette kind of sounds like you're talking a little bit about dating etiquette and, to some extent gender roles, but some it's just there isn't really a rule book for dating today. There certainly used to be. You would have like the dance card and you had a certain process and you had to ask the parents, and like there was a particular way to do this. And I think the rule rug has been pulled out from under us. Do you feel like there's a dating etiquette for older daters that doesn't necessarily exist for younger daters? Or do you feel like it's sort of, we're all in the same boat?
Well, I don't talk to a lot of younger daters, but I will tell you, older daters, myself included, still feel like there is some sort of routine, like you said, the escalator, relationship escalator. There's some sort of dating routine we need to follow. And if we don't follow that routine, we're going to end up with a loser. Or even worse than being with a loser is being alone. I mean, of course, I don't believe that. I'm speaking, facetiously. But yeah, I do. Like, and even on that Later Dater show, which I really like, I highly recommend it. You had a woman, there was some guy calling her and she didn't want to answer it because, oh my gosh, she's calling her. She doesn't want him to know she's home and that she's going to pick up his phone calls. So yeah, I do think, and there are certain traditions about dating that I don't want to throw out the window ever.
Tell us what they are.
Well, wow. Let me see. Maybe I just backed myself into a corner here. I think it's nice to express generosity. When I say generosity, I'm not automatically coupling that with money and how much money you're going to spend. But I think it's become such a, what harm would it be if I'm asking somebody out or if a man is asking me out? What harm would there be in just taking the lead and saying, I just want you to know I'm going to pay for this. I'm asking you out. I want to get to know you and investing a little bit. And which is why I think it's a great idea not to have an expensive first date. I mean, I think it's better to do an activity like a hike or a walk or even, I'm not a big fan of drink dates, first dates, because I think there's a lot of pressure to sit there, drink while you're getting to know someone. I mean, so I guess that's what I mean.
And it could go
I think
off
it's
the rails.
nice if, yeah. But what is wrong with a heterosexual man just taking a little bit of the lead and saying, yes, I would like to go out and, I'm going to pay. I'm going to pay for the first date.
Do you think that has to be voiced today? Like he has to say, I'm taking you out and I'm paying?
I think it does, which is not fair. It's not fair. And I've had dating coaches. Now, these are, again, they're very traditionally minded dating coaches, saying things like, if he's not going to pay for your coffee, if he can't afford your coffee, he can't afford you, something like that. Or if you don't want to spend money, because, people do have, finances, especially as we get older and
Go for a walk.
we might not be bringing in any new income. Let's
creative.
meet and go for a walk, or let's go to a free museum or something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
actually, my husband and I tomorrow night, we're going, not to necessarily save money, but we're going to an art gallery. It's free. We're not going to buy anything. But I'm like, it's like a free museum.
Yeah.
It's like a free museum.
Yeah.
And I'm so looking forward to it. But you're so right. I think it's about, it's just what you said, Laura. It's showing generosity. And for me, I think people get stuck of all ages and all genders when they have a rule book that the other person cannot see inside. And I like your idea of the person voicing, I'm going to take you out and it's my treat, because I have heard this from a lot of daters. And actually, I had a client who was in her 60s, and she said, I'm taking you out. This was like for a third date. And it created a little bit of friction with the guy that she was dating. And we had to find the language to address it and make sure that he didn't feel threatened by her offering to pay, that it was a gesture, something that she wanted to do. But I just look for that balance. And when we have any kind of script of how it's supposed to go, I think that's when we get ourselves into trouble. Laura, I'm having so much fun talking with you. And we have so much more to cover. I have actually been collecting questions from our audience, and I understand you collected a few questions from your audience that we could bring into the discussion today. So I hope you can stick around with me. After the break, we will be back with Dear Damona and Dear Laura. Welcome back. I'm here with Laura Stassi, host of the Dating While Gray podcast. So Laura, we'll start simple. You've collected questions from your audience, and I've got so many questions from older daters in the Dates and Mates audience, but I think many of these questions, it's so interesting to me, speaking to a wide age range, so many of these questions are actually universal. And the first question that you collected from the Dating While Gray community was, how do I meet someone without going online? And I hear this from younger daters, older daters. What is your answer to this?
Well, I've always said just keep your eyes open, because you never know when you're going to meet somebody. And I learned that from a guest I had on my podcast who was meeting people like at airports and just walking down the street. And also, if you are doing things that you enjoy doing, like if you go to the bookstore, if you like going to the library, if you like, grocery shopping even, if you keep your eyes open to the possibilities, you never know what you're going to find. I was talking to somebody and he was divorced. So you know how you hear never meet somebody at a bar, right? Well, he was divorced, and he had gotten in the habit of going to his local bar, but sitting at the bar and eating dinner. He just didn't like to cook. He didn't like to be by himself. He liked the atmosphere of this bar. So he's sitting at the bar eating dinner, and this woman came up to him and sat down, and she ordered dinner too. And she told him she was supposed to meet a blind date or an online date at the next bar over, and he never showed up. So she was like, well, darn it, I need to eat. So I think she liked the steaks at this other place better. So she pulled up a seat next to him at the bar, and they've been dating for 5 years.
Oh my
now.
gosh. I
So
love that.
here's the thing. I think some of us are, and I know I am, hesitant to go out by ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, why go out to a movie by myself when I can kind of get a friend to go with me, or a play, or a musical performance, or dinner? And so when we are out, and it's not to say we can't meet people when we're with other people, but it might make us more prone to just seeing who else might be out and about that we might want to strike up a conversation with.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And I actually went through, when I was single, I used to be terrified to be alone. And when I say alone, I'm not saying like alone single. I'm saying literally alone, like by myself. I was like terrified of myself, apparently, because I don't know, it just felt sad to me. I'll leave it at that. So I was working with a coach who gave me a challenge. It was kind of inspired by The Artist Way, if you've ever read that book. And she was like, you need to do 3 consecutive hours of something by yourself. And it was terrifying to me at first, but it really helped me, 1, become less afraid of being alone. And 2, you make connections wherever you go. And I discovered I used to think I hated modern art. I discovered I actually really like modern art. I like some modern art, some I do not. But like I then understood the nuance, and I did classes, and I went on hikes, and I started to explore new interests. And that's the other thing that happens when we're dating. We get stuck in our interests too. And we're like, well, I haven't met anyone new. It's like, have you done anything new? How are you going to meet someone new? You're going to the same places with the same people doing the same things. So that is just my experience of your suggestion to go out and try new things. And also my answer to that is also just go online. Like this, I really feel like the stigma around online dating, let's just squash it. That's how the majority of people are meeting. But some of us still hold on to this idea that if we have to do online dating, we have failed. And it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that. And also it doesn't have to be hard, and it doesn't have to take over our lives. I mean, that's what I've built my whole career around, teaching people how to online dating in a way that does not suck your soul out. But it's possible.
Can I give another idea?
Please.
Go to your high school reunion. Go to your college reunion. Go to your elementary school neighborhood annual neighbor barbecue. There's actually a body of literature on couples who knew each other when they were younger. They might not have dated, but who reconnect. And I have to tell you, somehow a producer from Nightline found me, and I was on Nightline, and somebody posted it
Someone listened to your wildly successful podcast and called you.
Well, I mean, I was really shocked, really. But so somebody posted it on our high school alumni Facebook page. And can I just say, I'm probably getting more attention from high school boys now than when I was actually in high school.
Girl, same.
Oh, great, guys. Very nice.
That's so funny.
But I have, I've interviewed couples who got together later in life who knew each other when they were younger.
Yeah. Actually, my husband's aunt, she went on Classmates. Do you remember there was it was like a social media, Classmates, and ended up connecting with somebody that I think they didn't overlap, or he was a senior and she was a freshman or something like that. And they connected, and she got married for the first time over 50 to someone that she went to high school with. So go figure. Okay. So we have some very specific questions that have been submitted by the Dates and Mates audience. So I'm going to read them to you, and then let's try and give some people some help. All right. So now we're into the Dear Damona questions with Dear Laura as well.
Dear Damona. Damona, help me.
This one was submitted to us by an anonymous listener. She says, Dear Damona and Laura, I just turned 70 years old, and I'm in good health, still working full time. 24 years ago, the man I was married to at the time transferred us to California. I'm originally born and raised in Louisiana, and I'm a Southern girl through and through. 12 years ago, I divorced my husband, and I long to get back to the South. I have a daughter who lives in Tennessee, and my desire is to move there and find a lovely Southern gentleman. I don't know why I keep doing this terrible Southern accent. It's Southern. Find a lovely Southern gentleman and settle down. I did try dating sites for a while here in California, but I would prefer to be in the South. I want to go on a dating site in Tennessee, but I'm not sure how that would work long distance, or even how to go about that. Frequent commuting, of course, is out of the question, and I'm wondering if you think it's even a good idea to try to look into relationships long distance until the time that I can move there, perhaps in about a year. What do you say, Laura?
Well, we've sort of did an episode related to this topic. Does it ever make sense to move to find love? I would say, I'm wondering how often she visits her daughter in Tennessee, and how her daughter in Tennessee feels about her mom possibly moving there.
That's a separate episode, I guess.
But that, well, the thing is, when you're older, you do need a support system. I mean, we all need a support system, but as we get older, it becomes more important to have a support system. And that support system does not need to be loved, people who are related to us or people who we marry. It could be, friends, a church community. So she may have a stereotypical notion of what a Southern gentleman is. Maybe her idea of a Southern gentleman is someone who believes in traditional dating roles. And maybe she can find that without actually physically moving south. So it seems to me for her to be happiest, she should really figure out where she wants to live. Does she want to live right on top of her daughter or, an easier commuting distance to her daughter? But where she wants to live in this beautiful country of ours, in this beautiful world of ours, there's a lot of people moving out of the country. But do some exploration of where she wants to live. And when she's figuring out where she wants to live, it should be not only can I build a support system or do I have a support system that I can expand, but are there opportunities for work where I can make money, or are there opportunities? Can my money go, my retirement funds go farther here, whatever. And while she's dipping her toes in all those different pools, I guess it doesn't hurt to go online as long as she's not real specific. Yeah, so unless she's already done a lot of research and has decided Tennessee is where she wants to live, I would say go online and just open up the parameters a lot while you're also looking into where you would want to live, even if you're completely by yourself for the rest of your life.
That's such a great answer, Laura. And I see, this is why you're here. I hadn't really thought about the building of a community, because you're right. That is really important. And all of these other factors of deciding where you want to be. And I would say, can you use dating as a data point, in a tool in that discovery? Because thanks to online dating, you have the ability to date in Tennessee. And thanks to FaceTime and Zoom and in-app video calling, you have the ability to get to know someone long distance before you could do it. You could date long distance, let them know you're moving to Tennessee, go there for a weekend, and then you could set up back-to-back dates all weekend and see, do I really, but what you said was so brilliant. Maybe you're attached to this idea of what a Southern gentleman is, and that might not even be really what you find, but you need to sort of get there and see. So I say dating tourism for sure. And there's many apps where you can,
that's a great
search,
idea.
In other areas, or you can pay for a premium and get like a passport feature where you can search elsewhere. Yeah, maybe abroad, who knows? But I'm with you on that community piece and making sure that you're building a life where either that person that you end up with or your daughter or whomever is not just the centerpiece of your life, that you have like a patchwork quilt of community around you. So important. Okay, we have one more question for you from a listener named Jenny. She says, I am having an awful dating self-esteem issue, and I know that this particular problem is highly common among women. You see, after having 3 kids who are now 27, 25, and 22, and after being a teacher for 30 years, my bladder has taken a huge turn for the worse. Here I sit at 55 years old, feeling like an elderly person in poise pads. The incontinence has gone out of hand. I've had a surgery and physical therapy to fix the problem with no luck. I am so sick and tired of people making jokes about others needing adult diapers, because it is a real problem that keeps me from doing anything that will prevent me from being near a bathroom, as I have to go every hour. And all of these jokes make me feel like I am unsexy and that no man would ever want me. What am I supposed to do with this problem? Laura, I think this is a really important question, because I do hear this from a lot of my clients over 50, and no one's really talking about it. And it is something different when you start to be intimate with someone, and then you have this this thing that that first of all makes you feel unsexy, and then second of all has this whole other stigma. And it sounds like it's keeping Jenny from even being able to step into the dating process. It's really affecting her self-esteem. What would you say to her?
Yes. And first of all, thank you for sharing and being vulnerable, because that's the hardest thing, I think, is to tell our stories, to say, this is what it's like for me at this age. This is so hard. And, something you said earlier reminds me that in many ways, older people sometimes are our own worst enemies. Like, somebody in later daters just said, oh, once you're single at a certain age, we're all rejects. Or the actress Terry Hatcher, I think, she said something like, now when I go on dates, I just look at men and say, oh, I'm going to have to change their diapers or something. So Jenny is right. We are all kind of making fun of this, which, why, are we doing it because we're uncomfortable? I have no solid advice that I can give her other than it's really hard for us to date when we have this problem. And that it sounds like medically she's done everything she thinks can be done, and it's not going to go away. So what do you do? Do you join a support group and talk to other people? I think there might be actually men in this kind of a situation. Or maybe I'm assuming that she wants to date men, but maybe she doesn't. Maybe she wants to date other women. But it feels to me that when we have particular health and wellness issues, that if we can find a support group of people who understand and accept us because they too are going through very similar things, then we can sort of form the community that I was talking about earlier, where maybe there are strategies about, when do you break this to a dating partner? I mean, maybe there's actually very specific dating sites. I know that, people with herpes, they have herpes dating sites, and I don't want to connect herpes with Jenny's problem. I didn't mean to be trite like that. But what I'm saying is, all I can say is I hope she's able to find the support she needs, support in a community of people who understand and accept what her obstacles to dating, because we all have obstacles to dating. Let's face it. Once you've reached a certain age, it feels like everybody has something that they consider an obstacle that might be insurmountable. Mm-hmm. What do you say, Damona? I think you could probably help her more than I can.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've never had the specific challenge that she has, but I do know a lot of women who do. I was just checking the stats. I love stats. And women age 50 or over, nearly half of women experience some form of incontinence over 50. So as a society, I think we need to destigmatize it. I hear actually, on the other end, I hear from older clients who are dating men that they are finding a lot of men who have ED, and that they have a lot of, they're stigmatized for that, and they feel unsexy about that. And it's different problems, but it's the same, it presents the same issue in dating, that we carry these stigmas and we think, well, nobody's going to want to be with me if I have this thing. And maybe, there may be younger listeners that are like, well, I don't have that, but I have this other thing. Like, we've had guests on before who had physical disabilities or scars or, mental health challenges. Like we all have a thing. We all have a thing. And my way of handling the thing with clients when they're dating and they need, like, you can't spring it on someone, but if you can find a way to disclose it at the right time, and I want to ask you when you think the right time is, but disclose it at the right time. Like it's not an issue. Like, oh, by the way, I wear these. I have this. Like, this might happen. Like, this might happen. It's not. And here's what I do. What I do to prevent this, or like, here's how I handle this. And if it happens, we can just laugh about it and we can move on. So you just kind of say it like you own your thing. I say own the elephant in the room. You own your thing like it's not a thing. And it really does become a problem. Like like Jenny's saying, it's making her feel unsexy. It's making her feel like her self-esteem is low. And this kind of goes to what your original comment of like, it won't be a problem for them if it's not a problem for you. And if it's a problem for them, then they're the problem. Then they're the problem. But when do you bring that up?
This also reminds me that we really need to have a broader discussion about what is sex and sexual intimacy. And I've had people on the podcast, experts, talking about this, because the older we get, if we continue to define sex in very, penis, vagina, in heterosexual couples, penis goes into vagina and that's sex and nothing else is sex, then we're all going to have pretty disappointing sex lives, or we're going to have less and less satisfying sex lives. And so what is sexual intimacy? And, you brought up ED, and some men don't even want, from what I'm hearing, some men don't even want to touch or kiss their partner because they're afraid it's going to lead to something that they're not going to be able to fulfill. They're not going to be able to come through with it. And instead of having a conversation about, hey, this is my issue, I can do this and that, but I might not always be able to do this, or, X and Y. But when do you talk about that? So you had said earlier about the lockdown, which one really great thing that came out of it was we were all dating more intentionally.
And slowly.
We weren't jumping into relationships. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. We were getting to know people, whether they were, phone conversations or walks or, Zoom chats. And so by the time we met them in real life, we had had a lot of conversations that if we had met from real life in the get-go, we might not have had before we jumped into bed. And so I feel like if we can kind of bring some of that back. So in the course of discovering each other, not discovering each other physically, but discovering who you are, what you want, what you expect. I mean, it seems like that would be a general conversation. Of course, you don't want to have the conversation right before you're about to jump into bed. I would also say you don't want to have the conversation online when you're first getting to know somebody, right? Unless you are looking for a hookup. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you are looking for a hookup, then yeah, you should let them know right away.
Yeah. And you can start with an open-ended question. Like, have you ever dealt with this? Or like, how would you feel about that? Or, is this ever just
hypothetically?
Yeah. And then you get an open-ended response to it. And it's like, okay, well, that's something I'm dealing with here. And this is how I handle it. Not an issue for me. If it's not an issue for you. And generally then you're like, the other person is like, you kind of just disarm them. They're like, oh, I don't have to be afraid of this. Because that's the thing. We fear what we don't know. We fear what we don't know.
Right. And I was going to say, if Jenny is not doing any physical activity because of this issue, I would encourage, with her doctor's approval, that we talked earlier about doing things by ourselves. Well, maybe she does see what it's like to go for a hike wearing Depends, to see what it's like. If she has these experiences by herself, maybe she feels more comfortable than eventually bringing somebody else into the picture.
Yeah. We have to be comfortable with ourselves before we can be comfortable with another. Laura, you are so wise.
I know, and
I know you're like, I'm not the dating expert. I'm the dating journalist. But you've heard so many stories in all your time of hosting Dating While Gray. You've talked to so many experts. You have so much knowledge to share. So thank you for being here finally on Dates and Mates to share your wisdom with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. Such a pleasure.
And happy holidays.
Happy holidays.